And I would love to begin. Tiff, if you want to start by just introducing yourself, even if it's not from a professional standpoint, because we'll get into that, but just a little bit about you and your life.
Yeah, hi all. I'm Tiffany Bridge. I work at Nexcess. I'm the product manager for e-commerce applications there. And basically what that means is I spend a lot of time thinking about all the various things we need to do to make our products and services better and deciding in what order we're going to do them, which ones we're not going to do. Basically, it's a lot of prioritizing and decision making all day and a lot of like deep dives into the guts of how things work so I can figure out how to fix them. In my personal life, I am partnered. I have a child and a cat. I live in Washington, D.C., and I like in tech or adjacent to tech pretty much my entire career, sometimes more adjacent than I would have liked, but sort of over time kind of elbowed my way in to like less sort of like administrative and support jobs and more into like actually getting to work on products and services and things like that.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Thank you. Can you share with us about Nexcess? For a lot of folks that are on, this might be something they're not familiar with. So
Sure.
What does Nexcess do and what does it mean to us?
Okay, so Nexcess is a managed applications web host. And so what that means is instead of buying like a server and then having to configure that server or maintain that server, what you're buying is like space on a server that we manage to run your application. Usually in our case, that's WordPress or Magento. So if you just need like a really good place to host WordPress, we're here for you. And we manage like all of the platform optimizations and all of the like special sort of like supporting features that you need in order to run WordPress successfully. Like we handle all of that for you. And so all you have to worry about in your tech stack is from WordPress up. You don't have to worry about like what OS updates or things like that. Like you're just handling like WordPress.
Ooh, that sounds very, very helpful. And just making it more accessible to people, especially, you don't have to have like the whole range of expertise in that area with Nexcess. That's fantastic. So you mentioned a little bit about elbowing your way into a space that you wanted to be in. Can you tell us about your journey to tech, what that looked like?
Sure.
How you sort of took your interests and really built it into what you do now?
Sure. It started almost when I was in college. I went to a school that didn't have a great like computer science program, and the web had only just started to become a thing in the last few years, right? Like I went to college in the mid to late 90s. And so I was interested in the internet mostly because like my expectations for how computers should work were set by watching Star Trek reruns. Right. Like it always annoyed me that I had like if I wanted to get an answer for something from my computer, I had to put like the encarded disk into the right. I was like, this is not how things should work. It should work like it does on Star Trek. And so like when the internet started to become a thing, I was like, oh, this is how we get there. And that was really kind of what started my interest in it. But my degree is in political science, right? Like it was not in tech. And the programs available to me at my college weren't really going to get me there. And so I just sort of started teaching myself like HTML from like tutorials online. I mean, and we're talking about like, like 1997, 1998 HTML tutorials. I was printing them out and putting them in a binder and keeping them on my desk next to my computer.
I love 90s.
And that was how I built my first website, right? And then a few years later, like blogging was starting to become a thing. And so I taught myself how to use an FTP client, and I taught myself how to get Blogger to publish to my server. And then I taught myself movable type. And then I taught myself WordPress. And like when I taught myself WordPress, there was no such thing as like clicking a button to install it, right? Like you had to download the zip file, upload it to the server, change all the like it was early days.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it was like me and internet search engines trying to figure out how to do this. I did that. And I did that as a hobby for a long time. I just, I kind of ran those things as a hobby. And then I got a job actually as a tech recruiter. And so I was doing a lot of like reviewing resumes and like making contacts and things like that. And then as the company that I was recruiting for was closing their tech practice in DC, an old friend had called me and said, like, look, I know you're getting out of this business, but do you have anyone for this job? I need someone to come manage our website. And I looked at the description and I was like, I could do that. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry. Are we talking about you? So I basically, like, as a recruiter, placed myself into my next job.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Awesome. Love
and
that.
went from there, right? Like, so I managed the WordPress there. And then from there, I got to do like a lot of other interesting projects that kind of brought me into contact with like real big kid web shops who were like really building stuff. And then from there, it just sort of all followed, right? When I was ready to move on from there, I went to a federal contractor where we were like rebuilding a bunch of websites into like one Drupal installation. And then from there, I freelanced for a while and built websites for people. And then I worked for Automatic, building websites like on behalf of like the CEO of Automatic. And now I'm here at Nexcess. So it all just sort of like built over and on top of itself over time. But like the genesis of it was being interested in having personal projects.
Right. That's awesome. And teaching yourself so much.
Yeah.
So do you feel like, obviously things are very different from 1997.
Sure.
Excuse me. But in terms of our ongoing learning, because it continues to change, are there places that you now, outside of search engines, get your ongoing training? Is that something that comes with your profession, or are you taking classes? What does that look like?
So, because what I have been focusing on has been like open source technologies. A lot of the learning is just sort of out there, right?
Yep.
I'm attending events. I am sometimes speaking at events, because sometimes the best way to learn is to try to teach somebody else.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of that, and there's a lot of, particularly like in the WordPress community, there's just tons of material, and almost like the problem is that there's too much. Right. Because it's been around for 20 years and there's just like recordings of various webinars and various in-person events and things like that. So that's one area. Certainly there are, like, I'm always buying books, and I'm always, I don't do this as much, but I should, if I had more time in my life. Like my, DC Public Library has access to a certain number, like has access to like online course libraries and things like that as well, which is a really great resource if I were to make myself avail myself of them, which I don't always do as much as I should.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so like it's all like out there, right? I think like when I'm trying to debug a particular like error message, yes, like it is still like Google is still top.
Yeah.
And getting to Stack Overflow and hoping you aren't getting like an AI generated answer. But there are a lot of like, just for that kind of overall foundational stuff, there's tons of courses and blog posts. Like there are ways to do it. I think it still does take a certain amount of like gumption and interest to do it. Because I want to be really honest that I did this back before I had a child, right? I have a lot more responsibilities in my life now, but that just means that I need to be more organized about how I try to learn things. I can't just sit at home and like bang on something until it works, because I have other things I have to do. So I have to get a lot more organized about what I'm trying to learn and intentional about where I seek that knowledge out.
I love that. Thank you. And thanks also just for putting that into perspective too, because I also feel like people don't think about, okay, if I want to learn something, maybe, teaching it to others is the best way to really dive in. I love that sort of thought process. So thank you for sharing that. Sort of getting more into Nexcess and what you do now and that work. What do you sort of see as some of the exciting opportunities in tech right now? Like obviously you're doing it, you're learning, you're sort of jumping into it. I know that people, I'm sure you're seeing them utilize Nexcess in all sorts of different ways. So what ways really stand out in terms of how that reflects onto opportunity?
Sure. I mean, I think, it's interesting. Like I got into this because I loved the idea of like building the internet, right? But not everybody, that's not the thing that motivates people necessarily. Like it might, in which case, like the kind of job I have is really great. But people are using their websites to do something. At Nexcess, we're really focused on e-commerce. And so what we see a lot is people who are starting small businesses trying to sell something that they've made or something that they are sourcing or, whatever it is. We've got a lot of people who are just kind of like they got into WordPress, Magento, whatever it was, as a means to engage in their business. And sometimes those are people who like they had a great idea and then they went and hired somebody to build the website.
Yep.
And sometimes those are people who like got into it and built it themselves. And they're really like passionate about they've had to learn the technology in order to like bootstrap the business because for whatever reason their budget did not include the ability to pay for web help. And so we see a lot of that, which is great. Like those people have my whole heart. Like I love them.
You're like, I see you. I see you.
Yeah, I see you. Exactly. So we see a lot of different kinds of things. And and it's not just like e-commerce. People are using these tools to create courses. People are using these tools to run fundraisers. People are using these tools to do all kinds of things, like they're setting out nonprofits or whatever it is. And I think one of the great things about like the open source side of tech as well is like the tools are there for free. Like one of the reasons that we're the juggernaut that it is today is because it is free. You could learn it for free. You could go to WordCamp for $20 and sleep on someone's couch if you had to. I know somebody who learned it that way. And that's why I learned it, right?
Yeah.
Because I was broke and I needed like movable types licensing had changed. And so I switched to WordPress because they weren't charging.
Huh.
And that's a big important thing. I think it's interesting to watch people use these like open source tools, which are not always the most beginner friendly, but they're just sort of like hustling their way into knowing how to use them because they want to build this business and they don't want to spend $1 gajillion a year on whatever it is, right? Squarespace or Webflow or any of those things.
Yep. And that is absolutely true. And I think that like hustle culture and tech are obviously so closely entwined, especially because, like you said before, so many of the people who want to be doing something in the tech space have to learn it themselves and have to figure it out. So I'm sure it's really, I think personally, and I'm sure it is for you, projecting onto your experience, cool to think, okay, this is what I was doing when I first started versus now sort of working as a part of it and helping to build up organizations that utilize WordPress every day. That's really, really a neat perspective to have. So I wanted to ask you, since Nexcess is sort of this sort of huge framework that helps to support organizations and, like you said, fundraisers, nonprofits, events. How does that work? Can you walk us through that so that we can get a better idea of like, okay, well, I have a business and I don't want to pay a ton and I want to get familiar with what Nexcess offers me and how to use WordPress. What are those steps?
Sure. Okay. I mean, so here's the thing about that. We are a super great place to host your WordPress, right? So the way that you would work with Nexcess on that is you just go to our website, nexcess.net. You could, pick your plan and, purchase a plan, and then we'll install WordPress for you and help you get logged into it. But then from there, like WordPress is your oyster. But it does mean but that's where it starts to get a little bit more complicated, because one of the things that's so powerful about it is that you can do like almost anything with it. And that means like, oh my God, I could do almost anything with this. And where do I start? And so what I generally recommend is that people go with one of like the big plugins for whatever the task is, right? Like if you're trying to do e-commerce, like you want a store, you want people to put things in a cart and check out, use WooCommerce. We have a plan that will pre-install WooCommerce for you, or you can go get it yourself. If you want to have a course, you want to like run like a course for people, and this is very common for people who are like content creators, right? Like people who like TikTok and Instagram for a living, they decide, okay, I'm going to have a course. Well, then you need some place to host that course. We have a sister company called Stellar WP that has a bunch of different WordPress tools for these various things. And one of them is LearnDash. LearnDash is the best like learning management system for WordPress. And I think and probably a lot of non-WordPress, I think it exceeds them as well. You're going to get that, you're going to install it, and you're going to build your course in the system. I think it is, people will try to use, I think a mistake that people make is they try to stay to all free tools. And I think like after a certain point, there's like a diminishing returns because you're getting all of these like stuff made by randos and they don't necessarily maintain them.
Speak to each other.
Whereas like if you're getting to something that's like core to your business, like if you have a business plan and you're really committed to it, you know, it might be worth the $150 a year or whatever it is to pay for the tool that really the tool that focuses on your business. And so those are going to be kind of the steps that you would take with us.
And Nexcess will sort of say like, here are all the tools and this is what the one you need to choose. I guess that question doesn't even, I'm like realizing that doesn't work.
We're still kind of working on that integration.
Okay.
Right? A lot of those tools like were acquired by like our parent company. Like this is, you know, it's 2023. Everybody's been like acquired and like mashed together and things like that. And we're no different. Like it's true for us too. So a lot of these tools like were purchased from their founders and kind of presented as a package. And so we're still building that integration.
Got it.
But as you get kind of like, as you dig in to, you know, the sort of community surrounding WordPress, like you get everybody's got an opinion and everybody's happy to recommend their tool to you. I'm always going to recommend our Stellar Suite just because we went and picked out like what I consider to be like the best of the best. Right.
Yeah.
But, that's just my opinion, obviously. But you know, we can make those recommendations. And like the nice thing about it being integrated with us is that if you're running into some sort of issue between like WordPress and LearnDash and like the Nexcess platform, like all those LearnDash people are in Slack with us. We can just go ping them and get them involved in our support process, which is great. Like I love that for our customers. Is that like, because what you'll get a lot of the times in web hosting is like, well, it's not a problem with our platform. Go talk to the developer of your software. And then the customer ends up getting like ping back and forth.
I've had that.
And, you know, sure. Exactly. And that's a terrible experience. Yeah. And like, I'm not saying that never happens because we don't own all of the software.
Yeah.
But with these like kind of big marquee items, like, let me just go raise this with that team and see if they have anything, rather than sending you, go talk to the Give people. No, we can talk to the Give people because they're in the next Slack channel.
That's awesome. And is this all sort of clear and familiar when you sign up with Linksys? I'm like combining all of the things. Nexcess, like, like this is something that I'm going
it is.
Sorry, go ahead.
If I'm being honest, it's not as clear as I would like it to be. Like, let's be truthful. It's not as clear as I would like it to be. I'm working on that.
Yeah.
That's in progress. So like we do have an installer and we are working on ways to, like if you go try to search for plugins in WordPress, like we will surface those plugins to you. But it's not as smooth as I'd like it to be. And we're getting there and working toward it every day.
It's cool that you have that sort of forward-thinking awareness, right? That it's like, hey, this isn't perfect. This is how we're going to continue to sort of push us forward and what we're going to do. So I like to see sort of like the humanity behind it. That's really helpful and encouraging. So tell us, obviously what you've shared feels really accessible, but this whole hackathon is sort of for folks that haven't done one before and are super new to tech and
Sure.
are learning as they go, right? Just like you. So if you know nothing or like very little,
Okay.
you're right, you know,
Sure.
very little, and you know that, like, okay, for instance, our keynote that we just had was talking about starting her business, and comparable to you was like Google searching, downloading, figuring it out step by step. Is that the Nexcess way, or are there sort of, is it more intuitive now when you're using something like the WordPress systems or the like all of the little supports that you have? Is it more intuitive for folks that maybe don't know how to code on the back end?
Well, so, here's the thing. I feel like one of the great things about WordPress is that you can go through a whole career not really knowing how to code. Like even though I was teaching myself HTML and CSS at the beginning, like I do not consider myself anything like a developer. I can read PHP if I have to, right? So I think one of the things that is really accessible about it, one of the things that's very powerful about it, and this is true, like I talk about WordPress because that's where my experience and expertise is, but this is also true of a lot of other open source systems, Magento, Drupal, Craft, is that a lot of them are modular, and like WordPress has taken like that kind of modularity sort of to the next level. And if you can think of a thing that you want to do in WordPress, somebody has built a plugin that will do it. Now, will it do it well? Will it do it securely? Those are questions. But and you have to kind of exercise some judgment about assessing them. And there are the community does what it can to like surface like signals of quality to the individual site owner. But I mean, you can just go through and install stuff and add all kinds of features and never write a single line of code and never have to like, I don't write WordPress code. I never have. What I have gotten really good at is selecting things to integrate and implement. And I've gotten really good at kind of getting a sense of, well, if I do too much of this, that's going to create this problem. And a lot of that just comes through experience. But what I always tell people about it is that the best way to do these things is to get brave and not be afraid to break things. And so something that I think is really important in a host, like if you are using any open source package, and again, just speaking to WordPress, because that's my experience, is getting like a staging environment, right? The staging environment is what makes you brave. We include that for free with our WordPress plans. It just takes a copy of your site and puts it on a different URL. And that's where you're going to break things. You're going to install weird stuff. You're going to break things. You're going to roll it back when you don't know what you just did. Staging is where you get to be brave. And if you break it so badly that you can't figure out how to get back, you're going to delete it and you're going to create another one.
This is my kind of learning. This is how I do it.
This is what I'm talking about. Yeah, like you have, because I feel like the best way to learn any of this stuff is to get brave and not be afraid to break things. But that can be very scary to people when you're talking about like your business website, right? That's your livelihood.
This is all I've got. Right?
You have to be right. And that's why we do this on staging, right? Because you can break the heck out of staging. But meanwhile, like up on your business website, everything is working exactly as it was before.
That's awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
So your orders are still being taken. So you wait until you figure out how to do whatever it is that you're going to do down here on staging. And then you can take the final thing that you arrived at, the one that worked, the one that didn't break anything. And then you're going to go do that on your live site, right?
That's a really,
because
really
you have to be wrong until you're right. Figure out then once you have figured out how to be right, then you can go apply it.
Yeah, that is a great feature. I like that a lot because that is also, exactly how I learn and how you can sort of give yourself that confidence, right? Of like, well, it's not the end of the world if I mess this up. So I love that feature. Um,
Breaking staging is just annoying. It's not like tragic.
right. Exactly. So how did someone get started? What is that? I mean, obviously you've told us like go to nexcess.net, choose a plan. Is there anything else that you would recommend in terms of what that process might look like?
I mean, in terms of getting the site up, getting a copy of WordPress up and running for you to work with, that's all there is, right?
Yeah.
We kind of handle all that for you, and you complete the process. You wait around for a couple of minutes while we do all a little magic on the back end, and boom, you have a WordPress.
Awesome.
I would say that the bigger thing is more just getting in there and learning it. There are, like, if you go to wordpress.tv, there are webinars for like live word. There's like recordings of live WordPress events going back years and years and years. If you spend any time looking around on the internet, you will very quickly find lots and lots of like WordPress tutorials. If you go to learn.wordpress.org, you'll learn a bunch of stuff there. You know, and it's funny because I'm talking about all of these things, even though like I'm like, my colleagues are sitting here and I'm like not mentioning our company enough. But the truth is, like, this is like learning this process is like bigger than our specific company, right? And like when you just need a great place that's going to host your WordPress and not like make you worry about like whether you've got the right version of your operating system and whether you have the right packages installed on the server. Like, you don't want to worry about any of that.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for, right? Let us worry about that for you so that you can spend your time learning to do amazing things with WordPress, Magento, Drupal, Craft, whatever it is.
Awesome. Awesome. That sounds super easy and really exciting because, like I said before, it's so intimidating to even know where to start or to feel like, oh my gosh, yeah, I can totally do this on my own and not ruin everything. So I love that sort of package where you're supported the entire way through. I love that. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. We had Letitia came in with a question, and I know we kind of talked about this in terms of, you know, every single day you're learning new things and taking it on. But is there a new technology that has recently come across your work life or even personal life that you've learned, and how did you learn it?
Gosh, you know, the kind of stuff that I'm learning in my job is it's less and less the tech stuff and more the business stuff now, right?
Okay.
Like, I've never had a job before where like the business stuff has been my job. And so what I found myself learning right now is like Power BI.
Oh my gosh, we have a lot of folks that are like, I want to learn something with you, but so much of it is Power BI and like the analytics side of things and, you know, what that.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time looking at numbers in Power BI in my job. So like learning how to use that effectively has been, and some of that is just getting in and poking around because we have a BI team and they produce a lot of reports for us. And sometimes it's me just asking like really dumb questions to our BI analysts. And they're like, you know, you could just, you can just command click and you'll actually get to select more than one thing at a time. I'm like, I've worked here for 2 years and I didn't know that.
Game changer.
So some of it, right? So some of it is like, just get comfortable like with that feeling of like, I should have known that, but I didn't.
Yeah.
Because the truth is like everybody has to learn something for everything. Everyone has to learn everything the first time sometime. Right.
Yeah.
And so like it can feel embarrassing sometimes, but like best to you just got to push through. You just got to push through. So that's like the technology type of stuff. Like, oh, the other thing I learned recently, I never knew how to create pivot tables in a spreadsheet. And our head of development sat me down and showed me how to use pivot tables so that I could stop asking her for stuff. She was super nice about it.
We all have that one coworker.
Right.
That's our
she was super nice about it. But then like I learned pivot tables and it changed my life.
I believe you.
And like literally that's just like a feature of Excel or Google Sheets.
Oh my gosh, it's so true. And I feel like there's something to learn that's new every day in Excel. Like it's a never ending well of, oh, I didn't know we could do this or I could do. Yeah, that is so funny. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think I was thinking that I should probably start learning is like SQL. because that'll help me get deeper into our data without like waiting on the BI team.
Yeah.
So that's kind of on my list of like, oh, I need to go learn to write SQL queries, don't I?
Well, we have classes for that at GDI.
Yeah. Awesome. So those are the kinds of things that I'm still trying to learn, right?
Yeah. That's exciting though. It's exciting to be in a place that you want to be professionally and still see opportunities to keep going and keep learning. I love that. Is this where, I guess if I could ask you, you know, in 1997, is this where you saw yourself professionally?
You know, in 1997, I had no idea like that this was even a job.
That's fair.
Right?
That is fair.
Well, no, but seriously, because the title like product manager has existed for a long time. Like it started in manufacturing. But you know, in 1997, the first .com boom was just getting ready to get started.
Yeah.
And at the time, I didn't know any way in other than to just straight up become a developer. And so, like I really had to sort of watch for additional specialties to develop and expand, and then find one that was like matched the level of tech that I felt like was going to work for me, right? Because even though it is extremely possible to teach yourself software development, it absolutely is. What I found is that it's not a great match for my temperament. I get really impatient with having to like the level of like granularity and the logic that you need to be able to handle. Like I grow very frustrated and annoyed when I try to do that. And so what I discovered is that wasn't for me. And so I needed to find another path.
Yeah, no, I get that. And a lot. That resonates with me. Where do you see yourself going with this sort of like interest and knowledge? And I know I'm going to assume that where we all end up, the job probably doesn't even exist right now. But if you could sort of see into the future, how do you hope to continue to grow given what you're doing now and what you continue to learn on a daily basis?
Yeah. So, you know, this is something I think about a lot because like, as I have said over and over in this session, I've spent a lot of my career working with WordPress. And I've realized that as much as I like it and as much as like WordPress has changed my life, I don't want to stay specialized into that forever. And so one of the reasons that I moved into product was to try and kind of grow beyond that, is to develop skills that were more transferable. And so where I'm really kind of trying to take it right now is like, how can I take these like now product skills, which are really like somewhat technical, right? Because I've got like that UX background, but also like business skills, and continue to apply them elsewhere, like in other technical areas, right? Not necessarily like elsewhere to Nexcess, but like elsewhere to like the specific specialty that I'm in right now. And so that's really kind of what I'm working on, because it is sort of like that perfect blend of like tech and business. I feel like it's very broad, a lot of different things I could do.
Yeah, that's cool. And I love just the idea that, okay, this is where I started. This is what I learn on a daily basis. And that there's so many avenues to continue to go to as well. Because the more that you say you take on SQL and you learn that, like what comes after that in terms of what doors it opens and where you go. So that's super interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've put out to the group if there are any other questions for you to pop it in. But before we officially wrap up, is there anything else that you'd like to share in terms of Nexcess or sort of getting our business started, or what you recommend? I know you've covered a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is to understand that like anytime you think that you're going to have to like do it yourself or figure it out, like first of all, there's probably a tool that already exists to help you.
Yeah, that's the point.
But also there's a lot of value in doing things sort of the way that you know how to do them already, right? Like a lot of of value for me has been in like digging into data by hand when I didn't have BI reports to do it for me. And I think that a thing that is great about, like, for example, like using an open source product to start your business with is that you have the, like, that ability is available to you. And yet there's also these tools that you can implement. And so you have this great ability to sort of like take apart what other people are doing, but also like kind of figure it out for yourself. Like if you wanted to like dig into the data of your WooCommerce store, like we have some tools that'll help you there, but you can also like just get in and do it yourself, which I think is really valuable as well.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Tiff, for sharing with us and answering these questions and just being able to introduce Nexcess to the members that we have at GDI. It's brand new for us. I personally learned a ton about what you offer and got really excited because I think, like a lot of us, we have these great ideas, but knowing where to take them and how to get started and not just go the simplest route because that's what we feel confident doing, but knowing that there is a simple route that opens up all these other doors and that we can have that confidence probably for the same price at the end of the day. It's really, really awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. I am very excited to check out more on Nexcess for myself personally. And you shared a ton with us today for everyone that's going to sort of go out into the world. And over the next 4 days, we will be having our hackathon. We are in the process of creating our groups right now and people developing these apps. And even though people are really sort of pouring all their time and energy into something very specific for a short amount of time, after that, everyone's always like, I wish I could do more with this, but I don't really know where to go with it. And knowing that there is a system out there that's like, okay, I've got the wireframe. Now can I just put it somewhere so that somebody else can like help me push it forward? That's awesome. Awesome to hear what Nexcess offers. And I really appreciate you sharing that with us.
Thank you. I have had a great time.
Awesome. Well, good luck with all of your fires that are coming up today in the world. And I appreciate you taking the time out to share with us. And I look forward to learning more about Nexcess and our own exploration and hopefully seeing you again soon.
Yeah. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks all.